Okay, so today we're going to talk about masks and how they're used in theater. So, masks are really common in rituals and spiritual gatherings that often are categorized as celebrations. Um, and they're really important in the theater world because they stem from traditional tales and beliefs. And if you know anything about theater, that also stems from traditional tales and beliefs. And they use those in theater a lot. Um, and a lot of those times, those traditions actually serve the purpose of being entertaining, um, not actually the historical context. A lot of Western plays don't usually use them, but culturally traditional playwrights and like musicals tend to use them more. So, next we're going to talk about where masks came from. Um, they came from ancient theater, so based around Greek and Roman culture. So, Greek theatrical masks were specifically derived from the festivals of Dionysus, and that's also known as Bacchus for the Romans. And Dionysus is known as the god of fertility, harvest, wine, and theater. Um, so in that time, when women didn't perform on stage, which means that they had to use masks to um, show that there was a woman. So the male characters would put the mask on to make it obvious that they were playing a woman. And then also, it's thought that these masks helped the actors project because of the echo, so it amplified the voice. Um, and then the masks often represent tragedy and comedy, which have become symbols of theater today, and they come from ancient Greek drama. Um, it really reflects the, the diversity of the stage and human behavior and emotion, um, and what masks represent in theater. And so we're going to move on to what masks represent in theater. So because of these traditions, masks are usually used to portray the devil, demons, or even the seven deadly sins in the Bible. In one of Shakespeare's plays, the entire play is about the way that we mask our identity and hide our true feelings, literally and figuratively, is what Henry Chev said. And it makes sense because Shakespeare was trying to show how putting the mask on basically takes away who you are underneath. And we'll get into more of that about devising the character in a minute. But it's also about communication between humans and the imaginary, the battle of good versus evil, superhuman heroes and superhuman evils. And it's really just like a sci-fi sense of things that don't exist but do exist in the theater world. So how can you masks represent theater? What do masks represent in theater? So sometimes masks are used to represent the leading character, and that's usually in the Chinese opera because they're really big on that. So two really common theater masks are the happy-faced one and the sad-faced one. You've probably seen it before. So the happy-faced one represents comedy, and the sad face represents tragedy, which is what I was talking about, the two common elements of theater. And these two masks are the symbols of the Greek muses, Thalia and Melpomene. And there's a story about them, and that created the identity of masks. So how do we apply masks? There's a type of theater called commedia dell'arte, and the best translation to English would be the comedy of craft. And basically what you do is it's a theater revolving around masks and improv. So you use the masks to create like a physical comedy through your improv, and it's just recognizing how to deal with the other person who's also using the mask. So you take on the form of the mask, which is really important. because that's the whole point of using a mask in theater, is that you take on the form of it. Another part is that you have to devise your character in the mask, and that's where I am. When you're devising a character and you put on a mask, you're taking on that mask. So you can choose to make the mask anything that you want it to be. You can make your own mask, and then how does that affect what you're doing? How does that affect your theater? And naturally, you would think that a mask affects one's behavior, because even if you put on a certain item of clothing, you begin to feel more in character. You know, you wake up one morning and you decide, I'm going to wear this because you want to feel this way, and all day you feel that way if you can set your mind up to feel that. And then the last thing that you can apply masks to is probably scenography. So in any play, there's going to be the lighting and the costume in that sense. And masks really help to add to the costume. They are the costume. Sometimes you don't even need the other pieces of the costume because the mask does it itself. And I think that it creates the scene, the aroma, the mood for the entire staging. It can either set or decrease the intimacy in the space. A lot of times blank masks really make people feel far away. Really like colorful ones make people feel a little bit more engaged. And then also masks can create fear. It can create sadness, things like that. And even if it does represent gender or culture, it is important to look at the fact that masks are not only in theater, but they're everywhere. So of course they apply to theater, because if they apply in real life, we're all putting on a mask that we want you to see. Thank you.